So you've ridden some gas bikes as well as electric bikes. I know this was your first bike,
Mm-hmm.
and first being electric, it's hard to beat. But how does it compare to a gas bike?
Oh man. Well, you want me to talk just to the bike itself, or you want to talk about the total experience here?
Yeah, full experience. Going to a gas station, smelling the fumes,
Yeah.
uh,
Liquid cancer, right?
being able to ride for miles and miles and miles. No,
I
no
can tell
range
you,
anxiety.
I don't enjoy pumping gas with the filler hole between my legs. I'm just gonna say that I don't like being in the direct vicinity of the vapors because it's not only toxic but it just smells disgusting. Um, I like being able to come home and plug into an outlet. Yeah, where's it? It's right there. So that's convenient. I mean, it does take a lot of time to charge, but if I'm just commuting back and forth to work, I mean, daily lifestyle, plugging it in takes 10 seconds. Whereas getting gas, I may need to go a couple of miles out of my way. But that being said, I really like the low maintenance of the Zero. I have done practically almost nothing to it. But on a recent ride, I went out with a few buddies and we went to Mount St. Helens. And it was a beautiful day. It was a beautiful ride, and I was not on the Zero. I was on another bike, which we'll get to in a little bit, right? But while I was out there, we got to Johnston Ridge Observatory, which is basically the end of the road. And we turned around and we went maybe a quarter mile to a lookout that was right near the observatory. And I was having a blast. And I was like, this is an amazing ride. I'm having a great time with my buddies. And for a split second, I was like, I really wish I had my Zero. And then it hit me like a ton of bricks. I was like, no, I don't. Because if I had my Zero, would have never made it out here because of the range between the charger that's closest to the top of the mountain. Okay, so the round trip would not have made it in a strict manner of how many miles it is in the round trip. And also, it was a spirited ride. And we all know that the faster you go on a Zero, the quicker your battery gets eaten up, right? So it really, really put into perspective the reality of having an electric bike and dealing with the limitations would mean that if I was to have only this electric bike, I would be sacrificing rides like out to Mount St. Helens. Just, beautiful sceneries, gorgeous days, being able to enjoy the long sweeping roads and that kind of thing. And spending, I was going to say quality time with your buddies out there on the road. And it really kind of put me in a funk because at that point, I was convinced that I was ready to move forward with just owning an electric bike. But that realization that it's actually going to be a sacrifice, and to a certain point, you got to kind of balance moving forward with innovative technology and not having all of the available infrastructure and resources versus, well, if I want to have fun, I've got to deal with the oil changes and the spark plugs. And that'd be okay time to talk about your ideal scenario versus your real life scenario. What I mean by that is my ride to work is it's less than 11 miles from my house to my work. It takes me about 16, 17 minutes because I don't really have any traffic, right?
Because you ride slow.
Yeah. So for that type of lifestyle, the Zero is fantastic, right? I could probably ride back and forth to work twice, maybe 3 times before I even need to think about charging. So ideally, that's fantastic, and that's my 90% real life scenario. And then the ideal 10% is for the longer rides. You want to go out, you want to blast a mountain road, you want to do a long road trip over the weekend or whatever you want to do. For somebody like myself, that is more the exception than the rule. Do you stick with the bike that fits 90% of your real life application? Or do you go out and you buy the bike that's capable of handling the 10% of your riding style and then potentially not a good fit for the other 90% or maybe even overkill? And mean, I don't have the answer to that.
Hmm.
A lot of people say, well, buy another bike.
It's usually a compromise. Either if you have one bike, it's always a compromise.
Yeah. Yeah, so, but you got to choose one or the other, is what I'm saying, right?
Well, even like if you want to go on the dirt or the street, or if you want to go high speed or low speed, or you know.
Do you want to be in an aggressive tucked position?
Yeah.
Do you want to be sitting upright? I mean, do you want to be sitting on a leather couch with two wheels under it? You know what I mean? So it's kind of, I mean, there's a scenario of compromise, like you said, or if you're financially well off, you can just have a whole stable of bikes. That's not the case for me.
Right.
I don't know how many other people are, but
yeah, maybe there's an FX behind that pile of stuff. There should be.
And so now that we're talking about bikes and stables and such, I think another point that has come up in my recent conversation with my friends is, things like oil changes. What are we doing here? Provide a level of intimacy with your machine, because you're kind of maybe taking care of your bike, or you're giving back to the bike that gives so much to you. And I get that because being a gearhead in the automotive world, I really enjoyed modifying, tuning,
Your machine.
upkeeping, maintaining your machine, because you spend a lot of quality time with it. And, on the downtime, let's call it, when you're not out on the road, it feels good to kind of be, again, I'm going to use the word intimate with the machine, because it is. A lot of people maybe they do it alone, and I don't mean any euphemisms there. But, it's quiet time, and it's making sure that the machine is well taken care of. But, I mean, I'm over oil changes. I'm not a big fan of oil changes. And nobody likes things like broken studs or, spark plug electrodes that fall into the cylinder and that kind of stuff. So, they tend to theorize that in the electric motorcycle, because there's no maintenance or whatever, you don't get the same level of intimacy. I think that's false. For one, I love to clean and wash my bike, which doesn't show because it's dirty. But I'll let you know that a dirty bike is a loved bike, because if you wash it, it tends to fall apart. But there's other things, man. There's other things. Like I said earlier, you can connect to the bike via Bluetooth in 3 different ways. You can definitely change the bike in a way that makes it individual to you, in a way that will probably not be similar to other bikes in the community, because, like we discussed earlier, there's not a whole lot of aftermarket stuff there. So if you're doing anything to the bike, chances are you're making it very personal, and you're doing it yourself in your garage. So that's kind of neat. And I'm not a fabricator by trade or anything like that, so I mean, I don't have a whole lot of skill in that realm. You can see my vinyl thing is pretty elementary, but at least, I mean, I don't ride down the road and see anybody else with a red vinyl plug around their bike in this manner.
True.
I mean,
True. There is not another Zero like this.
My homebrew frame sliders, they did the job the first time around. They're still usable, and they kept the tail of the bike safe, that's for sure. But there's things that we can do to still have that level of attachment to the electric bike. I remember when I went out and I charged on a J port station, for the very first time, J1772, for those of you that needed a long explanation. It was a brilliant experience, And I mean, there was a lot of uneasiness, because it's my first time, is it going to work? You plug it in, and there's this delay, and then the charger finally kind of kicks in, and you see the numbers come up on the cluster, and they start to get smaller and smaller. Because when I first came on, it still said 8 hours, and I was like, oh my god, I spent all this money, it's still going to be 8 hours worth of charging, right? And then you just see the estimated time of charging just fall away, and it's just like, this is what it's about. This is the moment. It's finally happening. Oh my god! I probably did a happy dance, but hopefully nobody saw. But it's just, there's other victories, and there's other ways that you're definitely going to connect with the bike. One thing that everybody says, oh, electric motorcycles are quiet. Well, I'll tell you what. There are definite distinctive sounds to it, but the quiet is a real thing. And I'll tell you what, you want to get intimate with your bike, ride a bike that doesn't make any noise. I'll tell you that, because you get to hear the tire sounds, you get to hear everything around it, and I'll tell you what, you get to spend time with the bike, and not all the things that you guys say are awesome, right? The symphony coming from your exhaust, and the vibrations of the motor under your, I was going to say your body, because I don't want to get too personal about that. And I'll tell you what.
Tell them what.
I've seen what that's like. And I'm just gonna say that, yeah. I mean, I get it. You know, the sound of horsepower and all that. I mean, it's appealing, but after a while, all that droning and such. I mean, it takes away from the experience for me. But unless you're on an electric bike and you're experiencing, you're not gonna know what I'm talking about. But it's just this whole other level. It's apples and oranges. You know, I mean, being on an electric bike, it's really even switching from the, what were they, Michelin pilots that come on the bike,
Yeah.
right? So those are the dual sport tires. Then I went to Shinko E705s, and now I'm on the Bridgestone Battleaxe BT45s, I think. Right? Did I say that right? Anyway, the differences in smoothness were tremendously detectable because of how smooth the bike itself is. And on these road tires, it is just phenomenal. I can't even imagine what the SR was like even from day one.
Oh yeah.
But I'm just saying that, like, it's a whole nother experience to be on something so quiet and so vibration free, because then you really get to feel everything else that's going on with the bike. You know, it's not masked by the vibration and the noise. I don't know how. I mean, I really don't think I can put that into words, but it is it's an intimate thing. So, and I think it's a trade-off, right? So if you're not doing oil changes, you get to enjoy a quiet ride.
Definitely. Yeah, we've been talking about a lot of the negatives of the electric life, but this is all, you know, what really makes it worth it.